The movie begins with a shot of Max standing alone in the desert wasteland. His weathered, rugged look tells us he's been surviving alone for a long time. He hears approaching vehicles in the distance, and his instinct is to run. As he jumps into his car, the Interceptor, a group of war boys gives chase. While speeding away, Max is haunted by fragmented flashbacks of his family, a wife and a child, showing the psychological trauma he's carrying. Despite his best efforts to escape, Max is captured by the war boys, subdued and brought to the Citadel, a towering fortress ruled by Immortan Joe. Max is dragged into the bowels of the Citadel, stripped and branded like cattle. He's placed in a cage and is shown to be nothing more than a resource in this world, reduced to the role of a blood bag because of his universal blood type. As the war boys hook Max up to a blood transfusion system, we see them pump his blood into Nux, a sickly war boy who needs it to continue fighting. This initial look at the Citadel highlights the brutal, dehumanizing nature of Joe's society, where everything and everyone is treated as a resource, including water, food, gasoline, and even people. In the Citadel's upper levels, we are introduced to Immortan Joe, a tyrannical ruler who wears a terrifying skull-like oxygen mask and armor. Joe keeps a group of beautiful young women, known as the Five Wives, imprisoned to breed a new generation of healthy offspring. The women have been kept under lock and key, dehumanized as prized breeders, because the radiation poisoning in this world makes many people sterile or causes severe mutations. Imperator Furiosa, one of Immortan Joe's trusted lieutenants, is introduced leading a convoy in a massive war rig to collect guzzling from Gastown and bullets from the bullet farm. Furiosa looks stoic and scarred, with a mechanical prosthetic arm. However, as the convoy moves along the road, Furiosa suddenly veers off course. We soon learn that this is a planned escape. Furiosa has smuggled Joe's 5 wives into the war rig, and they are making a desperate attempt to flee. The tension builds as the convoy's war boys realize something is wrong, and Furiosa's betrayal becomes apparent to Immortan Joe. Furious, Joe unleashes his war boys in a massive pursuit. Nux, recovering from his blood transfusion, demands to join the chase with Max still hooked up to him as a portable blood bag. This creates an immediate sense of urgency, with the convoy chasing Furiosa and the war boys all clamoring for the glory of capturing her. Furiosa leads the war rig into the desert, and the first real action sequence begins. Immortan Joe's massive convoy follows, featuring bizarre, weaponized vehicles and frenzied war boys. The cars are an imaginative mix of post-apocalyptic madness, spiked vehicles, motorcycles, and custom war machines rigged with harpoons, spikes, and explosives. Nux, with Max strapped to the front of his car like a hood ornament, is among the most eager, hoping to make his way to Valhalla, their heaven, by dying a glorious death for Joe. The war boys' religious fanaticism is revealed as they spray chrome paint onto their mouths, preparing for death by shouting, "Witness me." The convoy barrels into a massive sandstorm that rages across the desert, a storm so large and intense that it includes tornadoes made of sand and lightning. This sequence is one of the film's most visually stunning. Amid the chaos, Furiosa steers the war rig through the storm, trying to escape. Nux, believing he can take out Furiosa, drives his car straight into the sandstorm, shouting, "I live, I die, I live again." Max, still chained to the front of Nux's car, struggles to free himself while they plunge into the storm. The storm tears through the convoy, causing catastrophic damage. Warboys' vehicles are tossed into the air, and many are destroyed. Nux's car crashes, killing his co-driver and knocking Nux unconscious. Max is finally able to free himself, although he's still chained to Nux. He uses a knife to cut the tubing connecting him to Nux, but he can't yet remove the chain itself. After surviving the storm, Max finds the war rig stuck in the sand and approaches cautiously. He encounters Furiosa and the wives repairing the rig. Still chained to Nux's unconscious body, Max demands water and weapons. Furiosa and the wives resist, leading to a tense standoff. The scene is intensely physical, with Max and Furiosa grappling in a brutal fight. Furiosa shows her combat prowess, using her prosthetic arm as a weapon, but Max is a feral survivor and eventually gains the upper hand. Despite the hostility, Max eventually agrees to help them once he realizes they have the water and resources he needs. He still remains guarded, however, and his interactions with the wives, particularly splendid Angarad, are initially terse and suspicious. This scene highlights the themes of distrust and the necessity of cooperation in this harsh world. Meanwhile, Nux regains consciousness and, obsessed with completing his mission, sneaks onto the war rig. Initially, he tries to sabotage it from within, but his efforts are quickly thwarted by the wives, who are surprisingly resourceful. Despite his initial aggression, Capable takes pity on Nux and comforts him, marking the beginning of a subtle, unexpected bond between them. Back at the Citadel, Immortan Joe is apoplectic with rage upon discovering Furiosa's betrayal and the escape of the wives. The film gives us a brief look into the political structure of this dystopia as Joe calls on his allies from Gastown and the Bullet Farm, leading to a large-scale pursuit involving multiple factions. This reinforces Joe's power and the interconnectedness of resources in this apocalyptic world. Water, gas, and bullets are the currency of survival. As the war rig approaches a canyon, Furiosa encounters a gang of bikers who control the pass. She has made a deal with them to blow up the canyon after she passes to block Joe's forces. However, the bikers, seeing Joe's army close behind, attack early. This leads to an extended action sequence where Furiosa, Max, and the wives must fend off the bikers. Max's brutal efficiency in fighting and shooting becomes clear here, as he and Furiosa work together seamlessly, though not without friction. The war rig blasts through the canyon, but Joe's army is relentless, and the chase continues. As the war rig drives into a dark, swampy area, it becomes bogged down in the mud. The swamp is eerie, filled with ominous twisted trees and deep sludge. During this sequence, Furiosa reveals to Max and the wives her true intention, to take them to the Green Place, a fertile land where she was born, far from Joe's reach. As they struggle through the swamp, they are attacked by the Bullet Farmer, one of Joe's closest allies. He approaches in a vehicle outfitted with dozens of mounted guns and spotlights, creating a nightmarish, hellish atmosphere. Max takes matters into his own hands, sneaking out into the dark to deal with the Bullet Farmer. A distant explosion signals that he has succeeded, and when he returns covered in blood and carrying weapons, it's clear that Max is a hardened survivor willing to do whatever is necessary. As dawn breaks, the war rig finally reaches a group of older women on motorcycles, the Vuvolini, Furiosa's people. However, Furiosa is devastated to learn that the Green Place no longer exists. It has turned into the same poisoned, desolate swamp they recently passed through. The harsh reality of the post-apocalyptic world hits hard, and Furiosa breaks down, screaming in despair. This scene is deeply emotional, showcasing Furiosa's vulnerability and sense of hopelessness. While Furiosa and the Vuvolini discuss traveling further into the desert, Max, who has been mostly passive in their plans so far, comes up with a new idea: return to the Citadel. With Joe's army far behind them and the Citadel lightly guarded, they have a chance to take it over. Max's proposal is pragmatic yet daring, and though reluctant at first, the group agrees to the plan. The last act of the film is an extended, epic chase back to the Citadel. Furiosa and the Vuvolini drive the war rig full speed toward Joe's forces. What follows is a chaotic, intense battle with explosions, harpoons, and war machines clashing on the desolate highway. The action is relentless, with multiple characters risking their lives. Nux, who has now fully defected to the side of Furiosa and the wives, performs a heroic act by sacrificing himself to ensure the war rig can escape. In a climactic showdown, Furiosa confronts Immortan Joe head-on. Weakened but resolute, she fights through Joe's guards. The tension builds as she finally gets close to Joe, ripping off his mask in a brutal move that leads to his death. His grotesque death is symbolic of the end of the oppressive regime he built around control and exploitation. Furiosa is gravely wounded during the final battle. In a poignant moment, Max, who has been emotionally distant throughout the film, chooses to save her. He performs a blood transfusion using his own blood, recalling his earlier role as a blood bag, but this time willingly offering it to save a comrade. The surviving members of the group return to the Citadel with Joe's body, exposing his death to the oppressed citizens. The war boys are stunned, and the citizens rise up to overthrow the remaining leadership. Water, hoarded by Joe, is released to the people, symbolizing a new beginning. In the final moments, Furiosa is hailed as a hero by the people, ascending the Citadel's platform. Max, ever the loner, quietly slips away into the crowd, disappearing into the wasteland once more, leaving Furiosa to lead the Citadel into a better future.